Good day, everyone. So for this for today, I'm going to discuss about the introduction to CSS, and with that I mean that I will be discussing or defining what CSS is, why do we need to use CSS, or why is it important. Now, what's the syntax of a CSS structure, and what are ID selectors, class selectors, universal selectors, and grouping selectors. I will also be discussing the three types of CSS, which is internal, external, and inline. Some of this you already encountered in some of our discussions on HTML. And also I will discuss multiple style sheets. So for instance, if you're using an internal and external CSS at the same time. And then I will also discuss about comments that are very specific for CSS codes. Alright, so let's start. What is CSS? So CSS, as you know already, is the shortcut or the acronym for cascading style sheets, and it's the language that we use to style an HTML document. So if, for instance, if HTML elements are only used to specify how those elements or the content are displayed on the browser, it is the job of the CSS to define the styles for the web pages. So that includes the design, the layout and variations, and how to display them in different devices and screen sizes. So that's where we define those formats. Now, so let me show you or give you an example of a CSS. We have here inside the head, the head/head code. You have specified how the body, how H1, and how P1 should be formatted. So for instance here, this is defining body, and this means that when we use HTML without specifying any CSS code, the body is just simple. But in here, we're redefining that whenever the body code is used, it's going to use a background color which is light blue. And that explains why inside your body/body tag, if you use body even without specifying the color, it will already display light blue as a background color. Now, this one is also H1, and at the same time, that's redefining how H1 or heading 1 should be displayed. Now, normally when we use H1, it will just increase the size of your text, and that's it, no? And we differentiate that from H1 up to H6. Now, no color, no specific alignment, until we specify it inside the HTML code. But because we're specifying it inside your style/style code, now here we have H1, color is white, and then we have text alignment is center. That explains why inside your body/body tag, if you use H1, even without any specification of its format, it will already display the heading like this. Now it's white and the alignment is center. Now the same is true for paragraphs. Now normally paragraphs are just grouped together. The sentences inside your P/P paragraph is just grouped together into one block. Now, and so here we're specifying that in this particular document, whenever we use P, and that's for the paragraph, the font family or the font that will be used is Verdana, and the size will be 20 pixels, and that explains why your paragraph is now going to use like this. So regardless of the number of times you use H1 or P, the format will always be based on the style or based on the CSS code that you specified in the heading or the head/head tags of your HTML code. Okay, so at this point you could pause this video. As you can see, you have your pause sign. Pause this video so you could study the code, and perhaps you could also test it on your own computers or devices. Okay, so we're back, and at this point we're going to discuss how CSS actually helps those who wants to develop websites like you. So please note that HTML was never intended to format web pages. That's what we have learned in our previous exercises and lessons. HTML codes are only to describe the content of the page, like specify this is the heading, this is the paragraph. So we enclose it with heading 1 or h1/h1 codes or p/p codes. Now, when font styles and other formatting attributes came into the picture, and that's about the time when 3.2, the version 3.2 of HTML was introduced, it became a nightmare for developers because it made those codes very long. And so, of course, it also became expensive for those who need to pay them on an hourly basis. So thus, the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C, decided or created the CSS codes, and this paved the way for the removal of some style formatting for HTML pages. Now, if we go back to the previous slide earlier, imagine if you have to specify, and imagine if you have a lot of h1/h1 codes or p/p codes, and you have to specify each time that this is the color that you want for all paragraphs, this is the color or the font that you want for all the headings, and that will make your code very long. So this one will make the code shorter. So that's the development of the website has also become shorter, and that's how CSS helps. That's a benefit of CSS. Now, so let me explain the syntax of basic CSS code. So the selector points to the HTML element that you want to style. So you have here a selector. For instance, you have P, or in this case here you have H1, right? So, or you have body. Now, so that's the selector. So you identify which HTML element you want to style. Then you have the declaration block. The declaration block is enclosed in curly braces. So you have the open and the closing curly braces, and inside it would be the property and the value. So you have here color, and then the property and the value will be separated by a colon. So you have color, colon, blue. And then you have font size, colon, 12 pixels. So you can have as many number of property and value inside your declaration. You just have to separate it with a semicolon. Okay, so now this is an example of that declaration. So you have here, you have P, so the selector is P, all right? And then you have the property and the value. So here you specify that the color will be blue, that alignment of your text will be center. And so each time you use P/P inside your body/body tags, so you have here two pairs of P/Ps. So you have two paragraphs. Each time you use that, it will use the color and the alignment that you specified in your selector or in your style sheets or in your CSS code. So as you can see here inside your body/body tag, you have H1/H1. Now note that we did not select H1. No, you don't have a selector specifically for H1, and that explains why the word example here, which is used or displayed using the H1 tag, does not have any, or that is not affected by any of those formats. Now your P/P has been selected. No, so you have a selector P here. So the color is always going to be blue. The alignment is always going to be center, and that explains why you have two paragraphs here. The one that's hello there, and these sample paragraph are styled with CSS. These two are now formatted based on that particular specification. So at this point, again, I want you to pause the video and I want you to try it out. So try changing the colors, try removing them or using them more than once in your code and see the result. Okay, so we move on with the discussion of CSS ID selector, which is one way you could specify the format in CSS. Now, so for the ID selector, I want you to focus on the body/body tag here, particularly on the P/P tags on this part of your code, which has ID is equal to para1. So in the ID selector, it uses the ID attribute of your HTML. So that's why here we're using ID is equal to, and then the value. So that specific value is actually equivalent to a specific format which you specified under your style/style tag, no, inside your head/head tag. Now, so you have defined here para1. So how do you define a particular style? So this one is going to be a unique name. It's a unique element. So here there will be no other para1 inside your style/style code. So para1 means that you want your alignment to be center and you want the color to be red. Now, so please take note that inside your style/style codes, you have to declare the name of your ID, okay, with the hashtag, okay, followed by the ID of the element, which is in this case para1. So you can have para2, para3, para4, as long as you proceeded with the hashtag code, and then you have probably various format specifications for that. Now, but in this case here, you're specifically saying that for this particular paragraph, you want to use the para1 format, which is equivalent to the alignment of center and the color of red. Now, please note that while para1 is going to be unique because there will be no other para1s inside your style tags, you can use this particular ID is equal to para1 as many times in your document. Now, please take note that it's not automatic, unlike the other example earlier, wherein the moment you use P, you will automatically have a particular format. In this case, notice that the second paragraph is not or does not have any format, and that is because you only specifically selected that particular ID for this particular paragraph. Okay, so I want you to pause this video at this point again. Try to analyze how this first paragraph in this example use this particular style. No? And again, I'd like to say you just have to use the ID attribute, okay, with a value that is equivalent to the one that you have specified here. So I want you to experiment that. Try to call that in other parts of your HTML code and see how it works. Okay, we're back. I hope that you indeed press the pause button of your video to try out the code that I have just given you. Now let's move on to the next one, which is your class selector. Now this time, instead of ID, we're using the class attribute of HTML. So you have class is equal to. Now here, please take note that we have defined center again inside your style/style codes, and that is we start it with the period followed by the class name, which is center, and inside and followed by the selector, which is center. We again use the curly braces and specified the specific attribute and value of how that class will be like. So in this case here, we are specifying that the alignment will be center, the color will be green, and notice that it, unlike your ID, it starts with a period, not a hashtag. So this time we say class is equal to center, and we're using this on our header and our paragraph. Now, so that means that our header and our paragraph will be aligned center. Okay, so as you can see here in the sample output, and it's also going to use the color green. Okay, so you can use that with other parts of your website as well. So again, at this point, kindly pause this video and try out this example. Alright, so the next part of our discussion is on class selector. So you can specify that only a specific HTML element should be affected by a class. So as you can see here, you have p dot center. Now this is very specific that you only want your paragraph to be affected by this particular format. So again, you're using the right alignment and the color green. But notice here inside your body/body tags that you're using class is equal to center on both instances for your heading and for your paragraph. However, if you look at the output here, the heading is not affected by that particular format. It did not turn into green, and the alignment is still the left alignment, which is the default setting. And that is because in your class selector, you have specified that only the paragraph element will be affected by this class. And so therefore, even if you use that in your H1, in your heading 1, it does not change the format of your heading. Okay, so please try this one out again. Try this with another, perhaps a heading. So say create P1.center, and then you also create H1.center, and then try different settings for that. Pause this video. Alright, so I hope that you now understood what a class selector is and how it is different from the other selectors that we have defined in the other slides. Now we move on to another example here. So as you can see here, the elements, the HTML elements can also refer to more than just one class. So here we have p.right and p.large. So when you define p.right, this one is a class selector that specifies that the alignment will be right and the color will be green. Now, if you don't want to fuse these together because there are some instances wherein you don't want to change the size, and some instances where you only want to change the alignment and the color, or other instances, further instances wherein you want to change the alignment, the color, and the font size at the same time, then you can use this. So you have p.right, which only changes the alignment and the color, and then you have p.large, which only changes the size. Now, so you can say h1 class is equal to right, and that will only change the, no, rather, since this one is very specific to the paragraph, so just like I've mentioned, what I've mentioned earlier, you can specify in your class selector that only specific elements of your site will be affected. And so since this one is specific to paragraph, now even if you use that class for your heading, it is not affected by that particular format, and so it's still using the default setting for your H1. Now for the second example, we're using it inside P tag. And so since this is specific for paragraphs, then this one is affected, but you're only using right. So that means for this particular paragraph, it will only change the alignment to right and the color to green. Okay, now what if you want to use both of these selectors at the same time? So you can just say P class is equal to right and then large, or you can say right, large and then right, and it will still take effect. So in this case here, you're using two of these class selectors for this particular paragraph. So that explains why you not only change the alignment to right and the color to green, but you also increase the font size to by 350 degrees or percent. Not degrees, but percent. Okay, so this is how you can use that in CSS. So again, at this point, I want you to pause this video and try this one out. Experiment with other values, experiment with other attributes. Okay, the next example that I would like to share with you is a universal selector. So what if you don't want to specifically mention a particular particular selector? So this is what you call a universal selector, and that is by using the asterisk. So as you can see here, you are specifying that you want the alignment to be centered, you want it to be green. Now, so here inside your body/body tags, even if you don't specify it, no, you may take note that you have your header and you have 3 paragraphs that are affected by that particular setting. Okay, so you have green and center for all of your headings and your paragraph. Now, so you might ask, why do you have to put it on top, and why can't I just put it specifically each time I use it? So aside from the fact that I mentioned this already, aside from the fact that it's time consuming and thus it's expensive for those who are paying the developers by the hour. Another thing is that if in case you change your mind, this means you only change the color at the top of your code, which is inside your style code. You will only change this one to blue, for instance, only once, and all the other elements of your code or elements of your website will be affected and will change to blue, rather than changing it line by line. Okay, so again, at this point, please pause the video so that you could try this code out. Now, for this part of our discussion, we will discuss the grouping selector. Now, there may be some instances wherein the attribute and the value that you're specifying for different selectors are similar. So have a look at this first code here. You have H1, they're changing the alignment to center and to red. You have H2, that means heading 2. You're also changing it to center and red. And you have your paragraph, also changed to center and then red. So you can actually fuse this elements into the same style definition. And that is by just separating the selector by a comma. So you have here H1, H2, and P. And then you have your settings. So that means to say, you are going to be, or each time you're going to be using H1, H2, and P, it will use the center alignment, the red color, and that will automatically display on your screen like this. So you have your heading, which is H1, which is the biggest heading, and then you have H2, which is the second biggest heading, and then you have your paragraph. Now all 3 of them are using a text alignment of center and a color of red. So once again, please try this one out. Please make sure that all of your parts of your code is correct. Separate them with a comma, enclose them with curly braces. Your property and your value should be separated by colons and separated by this declaration should be separated by semicolon. Okay, so at this point of our discussion, I want you to pause the video again. Try to internalize all of the selectors that we have just discussed. And then the next part of the video is specifying how to add CSS into your code. Alright, so I hope that you did what I asked you to do. So at this point, we're going to learn the different ways that you could add CSS into your page or into your sites, and that is the external CSS, the internal CSS, and the inline CSS. So there are actually 3 ways in which you could infuse CSS into your HTML code. The first one that we're going to discuss is using the external style. So the external style is actually defined within your head/head code by specifying the link element, and then you have here style sheet. Now the href is the specific CSS file that you have. So for instance, if the code for your CSS is external, it's separate from your HTML file, and you name it mystyle.css, then here you are connecting your HTML file to that particular CSS file. That means to say that all of the settings for the format that you want to use for this particular file will be taken from mystyle.css. So then you will have two files, one HTML file and the other CSS file. And the CSS file only contains the format that you want to use for that HTML file. And this can be shared to your other HTML files as well. So this means that within this is the HTML file, you may not have explicitly defined it, but all of them are in your file, my standard CSS. The background is going to be light blue. The color of your H1 is going to be navy, and your alignment is going to be the margin, the left margin is going to be 20 pixels. The second type of inserting your CSS inside your file is using the internal style sheet. The internal style sheet is ideal if you only have one HTML page that has a specific or unique style. So all you have to do is to put style/style code inside your head/head code, and that's where you specify the color. So this means that this is only accessible or going to be used only for this specific HTML file. Any other file that you would want, where you would want to use the same setting, means that you will have to copy this to that file so that it will be in place. Now, so that's the beauty of the external CSS, in other words, because you don't have to define that anymore. So it makes your HTML code a lot shorter. Now, in this case here, so as you can see, you have body and you have H1. So these two settings for your body and your H1 is going to be used for this HTML file. Okay, so that's what you call internal CSS. The other kind of CSS, the other kind of CSS is the inline CSS. So it's going to be used to apply a unique style only for a specific or single element. We have used this many times in our previous discussion of HTML. And so here you're very specific that you only want to change the color of only this H1 to maroon and the alignment to right. That means if you're going to have another H1 in another in this particular HTML file, then it may not use that particular color and alignment unless you explicitly define it again in that same line. So this is just a one-time use. Now, so like for example, you have here P/P. Now you have an inline CSS style, which is it's going to be blue. Now, if you're going to use another paragraph or P/P tags later on in this particular HTML file, and then you want to use the same color, you will have to specify it explicitly again. That style is equal to be color blue. So that's inline CSS. So as you can see here, to use inline styles, you have to add the style attribute to the relevant element. Now, the style attribute can contain any CSS property. Okay, now what will happen if you're using multiple style sheets? Now, so assuming that for the same HTML file, you have an external style sheet that you have specified in that HTML code, that the color of your heading will be blue. All right, so please take note that this is just a portion of that code. Okay, so it has style/style. This one is enclosed with style/style codes. Now, this one is inside your external style sheet. Now, this one is inside your file itself. This is an internal style sheet. So this one is inside the same HTML file. You specified it inside your head/head code. Now, so what will happen? Now, so it says here, if some properties have been defined for the same selector or element, so that you're specifying that for H1, the value from the last red style sheet will be used. So you try to trace your code. If the last used or specified style is the external style sheet, the color of your heading is going to be blue. Otherwise, it's going to be red. Okay, so try to create a file that's using the external style sheet, meaning you have here link, rel, and then the style. The CSS file is specified in your href attribute. At the same time, you have inside this head/head, after you specify the link, try to specify your style/style code, which also uses the same selector, which is h1. So that's what I meant here. So you have an external style sheets that specify h1 and an internal style sheet that also specifies h1. Now, as I said, if you're going to, the last code or call is on the internal style sheet, then your h1 or your heading will be red and not blue. Okay, now the last part of my discussion for this video is on CSS elements. Now, if you remember, when we say comments, it's always ignored by browsers, in the HTML file. And well, it's very useful to explain why you specifically use that particular format, or whatever part of your HTML file. It will help you remember these things, and it will help you document your codes. Now, please remember that if it is inside your style/style code, the comment is enclosed with a slash, asterisk, and asterisk slash symbols. So as you can see here, you have style/style. Inside that is a comment. You want to put a comment, you have to enclose it with this slash, asterisk, asterisk, slash codes. So this is a single line comment. It will not be interpreted, it will not be read or nor displayed in your browser. You can put it in one line. You can also put it in line with other codes. So of course, anything that is inside your slash, asterisk, asterisk, slash will be ignored by your browser. You could also have it in multiple lines like this. Now remember that this is only for that part of your HTML file that defines style. Now if you have a comment outside of your style/style code, it will be using that comment symbol that I explained with you in the other video, which is your exclamation point, 2 dashes, and then end it with 2 dashes. And of course, just like any tags, enclose it with the angle brackets. So if you are going to be using the comment for your CSS and the comment for your HTML at the same time, it should look like this. Inside your style/style, you use a different comment design or comment symbol. Outside that, you will have to use the HTML definition or symbol for comments. Alright, so again, I'd like you to try this one out on your HTML file. Try to put a comment for your CSS. At the same time, insert a comment for your HTML. And make sure that it works as intended. It's not displayed on your browser. And that you know the difference between the two. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for listening. We have just discussed or defined what CSS is, what's the importance of using CSS, or why is it being used by developers, what's the syntax of your CSS or your selectors, and then we defined the different types of selectors, the ID, class, universal, and grouping selectors. We also defined how we could insert CSS into our HTML, and that's using the internal code style/style or the external file that ends with a CSS file extension. You could also, of course, use CSS in line with your other HTML tags, which we have already learned in the previous videos. And we also discussed what will happen if you have multiple style sheets, such as combining internal and external file CSS file specifications. And of course, we also defined what's the difference between comments in CSS and what's the difference if you want to specify a comment in HTML. And with that, I'd like to say thank you so much, and until the next video.